And again, I always ask the question to my classes, why is that important? I mean, why should you respect the elderly? Why should you respect a woman? Well, that's just because that's just what you do. It's tradition. That's just the right thing to do. Again, why? And ultimately, I mean, there is no logical reason for that. It's just tradition. And again, Faulkner would say that that's a tradition that should stay. Right? I mean, that is a good thing. That's something that we can all agree on. But along with that Southern tradition of respect for the elders and respect for women, there's also is some really bad stuff, you know, the racism and the bigotry and the sexism. And wading through those traditions that often go hand in hand, the good and the bad, and trying to separate the good from the bad. Tradition is tradition simply because that's what it is, and that's the way it's always been. And when you're trying to rationally, comb through and find out the good and the bad, it's very hard to distinguish the two sometimes. I mean, it's not hard for us now looking back, but going, in the moment, during that time when you have to face what should stay and what should go, and you don't have much perspective, it's a very difficult thing to do. So, Miss Emily's father represents that Southern tradition. Miss Emily, like I said, is the problem. She represents people that are clinging to old traditions that must go, these old, dead traditions, right? Miss Emily clings to old, dead traditions, right? Miss Emily clings to dead things. Miss Emily clings to dead things. We see this occurring later on. This is all for a reason. This isn't, a coincidence that these things are happening in the story. When her father passes away, she doesn't recognize the fact that her father is dead, right? She holes up in the house and keeps her father in there for days until the town threatens to, bust down the door and call the law and do all sorts of things. She meets him at the door, right, and says that her father's not dead. She refuses to acknowledge, and it's not that she's in denial. Well, maybe she is in denial. It's just the idea that she can't see reality for what it is. She can't see the dead. She believes that the dead is still alive. She's clinging to these dead traditions, refusing to accept that they have passed or they are passing, because the story takes place after the Civil War, when there's a great period of transition and change and ultimately progress. And we'll see, you'll see whenever we discuss the lottery, the idea of people stuck in old traditions, assuming that progress is regression, right? Moving forward is actually taking a step back. And so we have all of these things, and after her father dies, Homer Barron appears, and after her and Homer, there's kind of two schools of thought on Homer, whether he was gay or whether he just was kind of rough around the edges, kind of just like to party. There's the line in there that says that he preferred the company of younger men. Now, in 2011, it would be easy to say that. If you said that about another man today, obviously it would be a reference that he is gay or homosexual. At the time then, it could have simply meant that, with that social structure, he couldn't have taken Miss Emily to a bar to down beers and play poker and smoke cigars all night. It would be socially unacceptable. You could easily just assume that Homer Barron is a little rough around the edges, likes to party, and doesn't want to settle down. That would give Miss Emily, if he doesn't want to settle down, that would give Miss Emily a reason to kill him and keep him. Or, again, you could take it that he is gay. Again, if he is gay, he probably is not going to marry Miss Emily. She might have propositioned him or proposed to him and him come out of the closet or turned her down because he's gay. Again, another reason for her to kill him and keep him. Now, we see Miss Emily really clings to this idea of being the last Grierson and her being superior to that. Again, I've said before, that's how kingdoms are created. You can't have a kingdom without the kingdom believing that the king is actually the king, because kings are kings and queens because they have a royal bloodline, right? Their bloodline is supposed to be purer than everyone else's. That only works if the kingdom believes, if enough people support and believe that lie. And Faulkner sets up, whenever Miss Emily goes to buy the arsenic, the druggist supports her own belief in her superiority. First of all, we've never seen Miss Emily really do anything. So the fact that she's going to buy arsenic, rat poison, should be a big indicator that something bad is going to happen, because she has her servant that goes and buys groceries and, you know, everything else for her. So the fact that she actually leaves the house and goes and buys something is a big deal, and what she buys is obviously a big deal. Second of all, the druggist, you know, by law, you have to state what you're going to use arsenic for. And she doesn't state it. She just stares him down, right? Like because she's a Grierson. She's Miss Emily Grierson. She's above questioning. Now, again, for her to actually believe that, there have got to be enough people that play into that fantasy. And the druggist does that. He gives it to her. She stares him down, and he bows to her. And ultimately, you know, he gives in and allows her to purchase the rat poison, breaking the law, putting himself in jeopardy, just because old Miss Grierson stared him down. We've got that. We see what happens with the rat poison. She poisoned Homer, and at the end of the story, you know, it's the big shock ending. It's that she had been sleeping with Homer Barron. That's why we noticed that, you know, Miss Emily, she had. They said the next time we saw Miss Emily, she had grown fat and her hair was gray. Her hair had turned gray. Well, at the very end, there's an indention in the bed next to Homer Barron, right, and another pillow, and there's a long strand of iron gray hair. That's hers, right? She had been sleeping next to Homer. And most people found that, you know, to be the shocker ending. But really, it was more disturbing is directly above that. Talking about whenever the man, Homer Barron, who was in the bed, said had once lain in an attitude of embrace. Now, a lot of people overlook that. And my question to the class is always, what is an attitude of an embrace? Well, that's cuddling, or hugging, or spooning, right? I mean, he doesn't get into specifics, but an attitude of an embrace is, you know, physical contact. So not only had she been laying next to him, she'd been cuddling or spooning with this corpse. And the corpse isn't a skeleton, right? Look, and whenever, in that same section, it talks about his decomposing flesh that was underneath the nightshirt had kind of all molded and fused together. The nightshirt and the decomposing flesh and the mattress itself that he was laying on had all kind of fused into one like gelatinous blob that she had been cuddling with. And again, you know, Miss Emily doesn't realize that he's dead, right? Because, you know, what Faulkner was showing with Miss Emily, first of all, she doesn't realize that he's dead. Second of all, you know, many people take this as simply a story for entertainment and for shock value, like a gross out, you know, horror type movie or shocking story. But Faulkner does have a message, right? Because Miss Emily is the person that clings to these dead things. She has he has something to say. She clings to these dead, dying, rotting traditions that need to be left alone. They need to die away. Good things need to stay, but the bad things, like specifically the racism and the bigotry, needs to decompose, to be left alone and to die away. Now, obviously, Miss Emily is sick, and Faulkner has an offensive question that he asks the reader, because ultimately, Faulkner would ask you if. Let me see the best way to phrase this. I know I've been trying to. I'm rushing this lecture. This is going on 20 minutes, and this normally takes an hour. And there's a lot more I'd like to say, but I'd like to get down to just the essential point of the story that Faulkner would like to pose. You know, this question: Miss Emily is sick. She sleeps with a corpse. First of all, do you think that sleeping with a corpse, because what's Miss Emily sleeping with the corpse, her actions are secondary to the metaphor. Her actions are secondary to what Faulkner is really trying to ask the deeper questions. Do you think that Miss Emily sleeping with a corpse is more or less disturbing than being a racist? Believing the color of your skin has something to say about your rights on this earth. And it seems that Faulkner would say that if you believe that sleeping with a corpse nightly is more disturbing, if that's more disgusting and more perverse than thinking that being a racist, or thinking it's okay to be a racist, you know, or being a, I'm sorry, if being a racist is less disturbing, is less perverse, and is less, horrifying than sleeping with a corpse, then you should probably ask yourself some serious questions. You should probably have a check on your morality and your worldview. Now, if you, if you obviously view that the other way, that racism is more perverse and is more disgusting than sleeping with a corpse, then Faulkner would probably say that you are, headed down the right path. You have got the right worldview. But if you see sleeping with a corpse as more disturbing than being racist, then again, you've probably got some questions that you might need to ask yourself. And that's a pretty point blank and an offensive question. And it's meant to be that way. Perhaps later on, if I have some more time, there's some imagery and stuff that I would like to point out to you guys that I might do later on this week. like I said, this is a 50-minute lecture that I kind of condensed down into going on 20 minutes now. And then I'm going to go ahead and post as soon as I can. I'll post it tonight. Just to give you guys the necessities for reading the story. And I've emailed you your assignment and stuff. And I hope this is able to help you, because the main thing is the point of view. Reunion, we know the point of view. Rose for Emily, we know the point of view, and we know why. Because you don't want to sympathize for Miss Emily. Miss Emily is the problem. She's crazy and she's a racist, and you don't want to sympathize for her. If you see the world through Miss Emily's eyes, you might sympathize with her. You might feel sorry for her, and you might identify with her, and you're not supposed to. Reunion, we see the problem with identifying with someone, through their own eyes, simply because you don't get the events as they are. With Miss Emily, we get the events